AITA for kicking my brother out of my house after he stole my clothes and lied about it. So a bit of context. I, 29F, recently moved to a new city for work, and I've been living alone in a decent apartment for about 6 months. My brother, 27M, still lives with our parents in the town we grew up in, but we're pretty close, and he visits me fairly often. He's been through a rough patch in the last few years. He dropped out of college, bounced from job to job, and has had some personal issues that have been hard on him. I try to be supportive, and I've let him crash at my place more than a few times when he's between places or needs a break. Last week, my brother came to visit for the weekend. We had plans to hang out, go grab some food, maybe hit up a bar or two. Nothing major, just a nice catch-up. On the second day of his visit, I woke up and noticed something strange. My favorite hoodie, a really nice, expensive one that I had saved up for and loved, was missing from where I'd left it the night before. At first, I thought maybe I had misplaced it, but then I realized the hoodie wasn't the only thing missing. A pair of jeans, a couple of t-shirts, and even a jacket were gone. I was annoyed, but I figured maybe I just left them in the laundry or somewhere else in my apartment. I didn't want to jump to conclusions too quickly. Later that day, my brother and I were sitting around, and I casually asked him if he had seen any of my clothes lying around. I didn't want to accuse him directly, but I was clearly looking for a response. He shrugged and said he hadn't seen anything, but then added, "Maybe you just left them at the gym or something." I thought that was weird because I hadn't been to the gym in days, but I didn't push it further at that moment. Later that evening, I noticed something even worse. My wallet, which I had left on my kitchen counter, was gone. It had some cash in it, my ID, credit cards, and a few other things. At that point, I started to feel uneasy. It's not like me to misplace my wallet, and I hadn't been anywhere all day, so I knew I hadn't taken it out of the house. I didn't want to jump to conclusions and accuse him immediately, but I had this sinking feeling that something wasn't right. I decided to confront him directly. I sat him down and asked if he had taken any of my stuff. He looked at me, clearly nervous, and said no. But his eyes darted around the room, and I could tell he was lying. I pressed a bit further, and that's when he admitted to taking a few things. He said he took the hoodie and the jeans because he needed clothes and didn't have time to go shopping. He also admitted to taking some cash from my wallet because he forgot his at home and was going out with friends. He seemed genuinely guilty when I confronted him, and he apologized, but that didn't change the fact that he took my things without asking. Here's where it gets tricky. I was really upset, more than I expected to be. I didn't mind sharing things with him in the past, but this felt different. I felt like my trust had been violated, and I was furious that he had gone into my personal space and taken things without permission. I told him that he needed to leave. I wasn't in the mood to argue or fight, and I needed some space. He was shocked and tried to apologize again, but I stood firm. I told him that he couldn't just take my stuff, and he needed to figure out where he was going to stay because I wasn't going to let him use me like this. He left in a huff, and now I'm feeling guilty. I know he's going through a tough time, and part of me feels bad for kicking him out. But at the same time, I don't feel like I overreacted. He took my clothes, my money, and lied about it. I know that families are supposed to help each other, but this didn't feel like just a mistake. It felt like a betrayal of my trust, and I'm not sure how I'm supposed to move forward with him after this. He hasn't reached out since he left, and I'm not sure if I should apologize for kicking him out or stand my ground. So, Reddit, AITA for kicking my brother out of my house after he stole my clothes and money and lied about it? Edit. Just to clarify, he did eventually return my clothes, not the money, the next day, but I still haven't heard from him other than a text where he apologized for taking my stuff. I haven't responded to that yet, and I'm still feeling conflicted. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more awesome videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. Thanks for your support. AITA for kicking my brother out after he ruined my chance at a huge promotion. I, 28M, have spent the last 5 years working my way up in my company. I started as an entry-level employee and, through sheer hard work and dedication, managed to climb the ranks. I was recently considered for a huge promotion that would have changed my life. Higher pay, more responsibilities, and a leadership role. It wasn't a guaranteed thing, but my boss told me I was a strong candidate. Enter my older brother, Dave, 32M. Dave has never been the responsible type. He bounces between jobs, spends money as soon as he gets it, and never plans for the future. My parents have enabled this behavior for years, always bailing him out whenever he messes up. They keep saying he'll figure it out, but he never does. A couple of months ago, Dave lost his job again and needed a place to stay. Our parents told me he'd be staying with them, but a week later, they called me, practically begging me to take him in instead. They said he was too much to handle, that he was lazy, and that they couldn't deal with him disrupting their retirement plans. I wasn't thrilled, but I reluctantly agreed to let him crash at my place for a couple of months while he got back on his feet. I set some ground rules. He had to be actively job hunting. He had to clean up after himself. He couldn't mess with my work setup or bring people over without permission. For the first few weeks, things were okay. He slept in, played video games, and barely lifted a finger, but at least he wasn't causing major problems. I reminded him multiple times to start looking for a job, but he always had an excuse. The job market sucks. I'm waiting for the right opportunity. I don't want to work just anywhere. I tried to be patient, but it was clear he was just mooching off me. Then came the incident that changed everything. My company was hosting an important virtual meeting where I was supposed to present a project I had been working on for months. It was my final chance to impress the higher-ups before they made their decision about the promotion. I made it crystal clear to Dave the night before that I needed absolute silence during the meeting. I told him to stay in his room or go out for a few hours. Just don't interrupt. He promised he'd be quiet. The next morning, everything started smoothly. I was presenting my work, answering questions, and things were going great. Then, right in the middle of my presentation, Dave burst into the room, completely shirtless, holding a beer at 10 a.m. and shouting, "Yo, where's the Wi-Fi password? The internet is lagging." I was mortified. My boss and senior executives all saw him. There was this awkward silence, and I tried to salvage the situation, but the damage was done. One of the executives even said, "Do you need a moment?" It was humiliating. After the meeting ended, I completely lost it. I yelled at Dave, asking what the hell he was thinking. He just laughed and said, "Relax, man. It's not like you lost your job or anything." I told him he needed to pack his stuff and leave immediately. He got defensive, saying I was overreacting and that it was just a little mistake. He said I was being an *** hole for throwing my own brother out over something so small. When I wouldn't back down, he called our parents, who immediately blew up my phone, telling me I was being cruel. They said Dave had nowhere to go and that family takes care of family. I stood my ground and told them he could stay with them again if they were so concerned. Suddenly, they weren't so eager to help. They told me I should forgive and forget because he's just going through a rough patch. I told them I had been more than generous and that this wasn't just about him interrupting me. It was about his complete lack of respect for me, my home, and my career. A week later, I found out I didn't get the promotion. When I asked for feedback, my boss said my presentation was strong, but that the incident made them question my ability to maintain professionalism under pressure. They went with another candidate. I was furious. I haven't spoken to Dave since I kicked him out, and my parents keep trying to guilt-trip me. They said I ruined our family dynamic and that I should apologize. So, Reddit, AITA for kicking my brother out after he cost me my promotion? AITA for telling my friend I no longer want to be friends after she criticized my career choice? I, 28F, have been friends with Sarah, 27F, for about 6 years now. We met during our first year of university, and we quickly hit it off. We've always been there for each other through the ups and downs of life, and I genuinely considered her one of my closest friends. However, over the last year, our friendship has started to feel more strained, and I'm starting to wonder if I've been putting up with too much. To give you some background, after graduating from university, I took a somewhat unconventional career path. While most of my classmates went into finance, marketing, or traditional office jobs, I decided to pursue a career in the arts. I've always been passionate about design, so I became a freelance graphic designer and over the past couple of years, built up a small but steady client base. I know it's not a typical or easy career choice, but I've been making it work, and I truly love what I do. It may not have the same financial security or societal status as more traditional professions, but it makes me happy, and that's what matters to me. Sarah, on the other hand, went down a more safe career path. She's a lawyer and has been working at a big firm for the past 2 years. She's always been very driven and ambitious. And while I admire her work ethic, I've never fully understood why she sometimes seems to look down on people who don't have respectable jobs in her eyes. The tension started building last year when I shared some exciting news with her about landing a big project with a company that I had been wanting to work with for a long time. I was over the moon about it, but her response was less than supportive. Instead of congratulating me, she made a comment about how lucky I must be to land that project, considering how unstable the design industry can be. I tried to brush it off, but the comment stuck with me. It felt like she wasn't truly acknowledging the hard work I put into building my business and making it a success. Over the next few months, she continued making little remarks like that. She would ask how I was getting by with such an unpredictable income, or ask if I was sure I wanted to stay in the arts industry, as if my career was just a phase or something I would eventually grow out of. I didn't take it personally at first, but the comments started to get to me. A few weeks ago, we were having dinner together, and the topic of our careers came up again. Sarah, as usual, brought up how she was so glad she chose the stable path and would always have a job with her law degree. I told her I was happy for her, but that I was just as proud of my career, even though it doesn't follow the traditional path. Then she said something that really hurt me. Well, at least you don't have to worry about anyone taking you seriously. I mean, how could anyone expect someone who does what you do to be taken seriously in the long run? She said this with a laugh, but I could see the judgment in her eyes. I was shocked. I tried to laugh it off, but I was really hurt. I told her that I didn't appreciate her comment, and she immediately tried to downplay it, saying she didn't mean it that way, and that she was just joking. But it didn't feel like a joke to me. It felt like she was undermining my entire career. I explained to her that while my path might not be as traditional as hers, it's still a legitimate career, and that I work just as hard, if not harder, than anyone in a corporate job. I told her I wasn't going to let her make me feel bad about my choices. Her response caught me off guard. She said, "Look, I'm just trying to help you see things clearly. You're smart, but you could be doing so much more if you actually applied yourself to something that matters." That was the tipping point for me. I felt like she didn't respect me, my work, or the decisions I've made for my life. I told her that I didn't need her to help me see things clearly because I was happy with my choices and that I didn't need her approval. She got defensive and said I was being too sensitive and taking everything personally. At that point, I realized that this wasn't the first time she had belittled my career or my life choices. Every time we talked, I felt like she was subtly putting me down, either by questioning my job, my income, or even my future. It seemed like nothing I did was ever good enough in her eyes, and I began to feel like I wasn't valued in the friendship anymore. After that dinner, I couldn't stop thinking about how her attitude had started to wear me down. I felt like every time we hung out, I was walking on eggshells trying to avoid triggering another one of her comments about my career. I've always been there for her during difficult times, supporting her through law school stress, listening to her vent about work, and celebrating her victories. But lately, it felt like she wasn't even trying to understand or respect my choices, and it started to feel one-sided. A few days later, I decided I needed to have an honest conversation with her about how I was feeling. I told her that I felt like she didn't respect me or my career, and that I was no longer willing to accept her comments about my work. I explained that her constant undermining had left me feeling drained and unappreciated, and that I needed space to figure out if I could continue this friendship. She immediately tried to argue with me, saying I was overreacting and that I was being too sensitive. She told me that I was taking things too personally and that I should just get over it. That's when I told her that, at this point, I didn't want to continue the friendship. I felt like she had no regard for my feelings or my accomplishments, and it wasn't worth holding on to a friendship that made me feel worse about myself. She was shocked and angry, calling me immature for throwing away a friendship over something so trivial. But I knew deep down that this was the right decision. I had spent too many years feeling like I had to justify myself and my career choices to someone who didn't care to understand. Now, she's been texting and calling me, asking me to reconsider, saying that I'm being impulsive and that we've been friends for too long to let something like this break us apart. But I'm not sure if I should just walk away from the friendship for good or if I should try to salvage it. So, Reddit, AITA for telling my friend I no longer want to be friends after she criticized my career choice. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she demanded money to fix her ruined wedding dress. So I, 30F, have a sister, Grace, 28F, who's always been a bit dramatic. Growing up, she was the princess of the family. She's always gotten a lot of attention, and for the most part, our parents indulged her. I'm not saying I had a terrible childhood, but Grace was always the center of attention, and I was kind of the invisible one in the family. That's not to say I had a bad relationship with my sister, but we never really had the best friend bond that some siblings have. She could be really sweet, but she could also be really demanding. Grace recently got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, 32M, and of course, the wedding planning began almost immediately. It's been one thing after another with her wedding, and she's made sure to include me in all the details, which honestly I'm fine with, until recently. About 2 weeks ago, Grace asked me to be one of her bridesmaids. I wasn't surprised, but I didn't feel particularly excited. I've always been the one who kind of just went along with things, and I didn't want to make a big deal out of it. I agreed, and she asked me to pay for my bridesmaid dress. The dress was beautiful but pricey, around $350. While that's a lot of money, I didn't think too much about it and went ahead and bought the dress. I've always supported her, so I figured it was the least I could do. A week later, Grace called me and asked if I could take her shopping for some accessories for the wedding, which I agreed to. While we were out shopping, she mentioned how stressed she was about the dress fitting properly for the big day. I didn't think anything of it, but she kept talking about how everything had to be perfect and how much pressure she was under. At that point, I just nodded along, trying to be a supportive sister. Fast forward to a few days ago, I got a frantic phone call from Grace. She was crying, and when I asked what was wrong, she told me that her wedding dress had been ruined. Apparently, there had been some kind of accident at her fitting, and the seamstress had damaged her dress. Grace said it was irreparable, and she was beside herself. She told me that she needed $1,000 immediately to buy a new wedding dress because her original one was ruined beyond repair. I was shocked. I mean, I know weddings can get stressful, but $1,000 on top of everything else? I asked her how this had happened, and she gave me a vague story about a seamstress not being careful enough during alterations. To be honest, I wasn't convinced by her story. I know Grace tends to exaggerate when she's upset, and I've seen her act impulsively before. I asked her if she had talked to the bridal shop about covering the cost of a new dress, or at least fixing the damage. She said she had, but that they weren't willing to pay for a new one and were offering only a partial refund, which wouldn't be enough to cover a new dress. She told me that she'd already looked for replacement dresses, but they were all over budget, and she needed my help to make sure everything went smoothly. Now, I love my sister, but $1,000 was a huge ask. I have bills to pay, and I'm not exactly in a position to throw away that kind of money, especially when I wasn't even sure if her story was entirely truthful. I asked her if she'd considered asking her parents for help instead, and that's when she got defensive. She told me that she didn't want to bother them because they were already helping with other wedding expenses. She said she knew I had more disposable income, so she was turning to me. I felt a little hurt by that. I've always been there for Grace when she needed me, but it seemed like she was taking advantage of my generosity. I told her I wasn't comfortable lending her $1,000 and that I thought she should talk to Mark or her parents about other options. She got angry at me, saying that I was unsupportive and selfish. She told me I didn't care enough about her wedding or her happiness. That stung, honestly. I've always been there for her in the past, and now, when I couldn't offer her the financial support she wanted, I was suddenly unsupportive. I tried to explain my side calmly. I told her that I wasn't saying no because I didn't care, but I wasn't in a position to give her that kind of money. I even offered to help her look for more affordable dresses or find a way to make the original one work. But she wasn't having it. She said I was being cheap and that if I really cared about her, I would help her out without questioning it. Things escalated after that. Grace told me I was ruining her wedding and that I was being a terrible sister. I tried to tell her that I wasn't trying to ruin anything, but that I couldn't just give her a large sum of money when I had my own responsibilities. The conversation ended with her saying she didn't want me in her wedding anymore, that I was no longer welcome as a bridesmaid, and that if I wasn't willing to help, I wasn't truly supporting her. I was left feeling confused and upset. Part of me wants to just give her the money to make her happy and end this argument, but I can't help feeling like I'd be enabling her entitlement. I've always been supportive of Grace, but this felt different. I don't think it's fair to expect someone to just hand over large sums of money whenever you're in a tough spot, especially when it feels like she was putting pressure on me to be her financial backup without considering my own situation. Now I'm stuck wondering if I'm being unreasonable. I want to be there for her, but I don't think I can give her $1,000 just because she demands it. I'm feeling guilty and questioning if I should have just agreed to help her out or if I made the right choice in refusing. So, Reddit. AITA for refusing to help my sister after she demanded money to fix her ruined wedding dress? AITA for not giving my sister the money she asked for to help with her emergency that I don't believe is real? I, 29F, have a sister, Hannah, 27F, who has always been a bit dramatic. We've had a pretty close relationship growing up, but as we got older, we started to drift apart. I was always the more responsible one, and she's always been the one who struggles with making decisions and being accountable for her actions. Don't get me wrong, I love my sister, but she's been known to get into situations where she needs help, and it always seems to be a last-minute emergency. The issue started about a month ago. I was at home relaxing after a long week when I got a text from Hannah asking if we could talk. I called her, and she immediately started crying. I could barely understand her, but once she calmed down, she told me that she had been scammed by some guy she had been seeing. She said he had convinced her to invest in a business opportunity that turned out to be a total scam. According to her, she had given him $2,000 to help with this supposed investment, and now the money was gone, and she couldn't get in touch with him anymore. I was shocked. I asked her how she could be so naive, and she told me she was so embarrassed and didn't know who else to turn to. Of course, I felt bad for her. I know that she's been struggling financially, and I've always tried to help her when I could. But $2,000? That was a lot of money, especially considering how much I've been working to save up for my own future. She then asked me if I could lend her the money to cover the loss, and without hesitation, I said no. I told her that I couldn't afford to just give away that much money, especially when it was her responsibility to vet these kinds of things before jumping into them. I also told her that I wasn't convinced this wasn't some kind of excuse or exaggerated story to get money out of me. I told her that, while I cared about her, I couldn't just keep bailing her out of situations like this. She got really upset and told me that I was being selfish, that I didn't understand how hard it was for her, and that she needed me more than ever. We argued for a while, but I ultimately stood firm in my decision. I told her that I thought it was important for her to take responsibility for her actions and not just expect someone else to clean up her mess every time. She said she understood but didn't talk to me for the next few days, and I didn't push her. A week passed, and then she reached out again, saying that things were even worse than she had let on. She claimed that her rent was overdue, her electricity was going to be shut off, and she didn't know how she was going to make ends meet. She told me that she had been in contact with her landlord, but they weren't willing to extend the due date for her rent. She said she was in over her head and needed $3,000 to cover the bills, the rent, and some of her other emergencies. I was still hesitant. She had made similar claims before, and in the past I had helped her out with smaller amounts of money. Each time it felt like things never changed. The money would be gone, and I would find myself in the same position of needing to say no again. I asked her for more details. How was she managing her finances? Why was she in such a mess? And how did she plan to fix this once and for all? Her answers were vague at best, and she kept saying that she was just really overwhelmed and that she didn't know how she had gotten to this point. The more she talked, the more I started to feel like this was another one of her emergencies that didn't seem real. I've seen her make reckless decisions in the past, buying expensive things she didn't need, going out when she couldn't afford it, and not budgeting properly. It felt like she was always putting herself in situations where she would need help, but never really learning from her mistakes. I told her that I wasn't going to give her that much money. I offered to help her figure out some more practical solutions. I suggested she talk to her landlord about a payment plan, see if she could take on extra work, or even consider downsizing her living situation to something more affordable. I told her that I didn't want to just keep handing her money because it wasn't teaching her anything about financial responsibility. I also told her that I wasn't sure her emergency was even real and that I needed more concrete proof of her situation before I could even consider helping. She got incredibly upset again. She accused me of not being supportive, of acting like I didn't care about her, and of being judgmental. She said I was always acting like I'm better than her because I had my life together and had saved money. She told me I was being a bad sister for not helping her in her time of need. She even threw in the old, "if it were the other way around, you would expect me to help" line. That really hurt, but I still didn't feel comfortable just handing her the money. She's been through similar situations before, and while I'm all for supporting my family, I don't think it's healthy for either of us if I just keep bailing her out. I can't afford to keep doing that. And I also believe that people need to learn to take responsibility for their own actions and mistakes. A few days ago, she called me again, asking if I could at least help her cover the rent and utilities for the month, saying that she would pay me back as soon as she was able to get a job and straighten out her finances. I'm really struggling with this because I want to help, but I don't want to enable her behavior, and I don't want her to think that I'll always come through when things go wrong. I also don't want her to think she can keep coming to me for money instead of taking steps to fix her situation herself. I'm at a point now where I'm wondering if I should just cut ties with her for a while. I feel like I'm constantly in the position of being the responsible one, and it's exhausting. I'm doing well in my career and working hard to save for my future, but every time something goes wrong in her life, I feel like I'm expected to drop everything and help her. I don't know if I'm being too harsh or if I'm right to stand my ground and refuse to keep bailing her out. So, Reddit, AITA for not giving my sister the money she asked for to help with her emergency that I don't believe is real. AITA for telling my friend I won't attend her birthday celebration after she demanded that I bring a gift she expects. I, 28F, have a friend, Emma, 30F, who I've known for about 5 years. We met at work and became close fairly quickly. Over the years, I've seen her go through some ups and downs, and we've always been there for each other when needed. However, in recent months, I've started feeling like Emma has become more self-centered, and it's causing a lot of tension in our friendship. A little background, Emma has always been someone who enjoys a good party. She loves any excuse to celebrate, whether it's her birthday, an anniversary, or even a random Tuesday. She's also very vocal about her likes and dislikes, and over the years, I've learned to navigate her preferences and avoid stepping on her toes. That being said, Emma's birthday is always a big deal to her, and she usually throws a big party with a theme, elaborate decorations, and invites everyone in her circle. Now, I don't mind doing something nice for her on her birthday, but this year, things have gone a little too far. About a month before her birthday, Emma started sending out invitations for her birthday party. The invite was casual enough, but it came with a very specific request. Everyone was expected to bring a high-value gift. This wasn't unusual, as Emma has always liked expensive and high-end things. But this year, she went a step further. She sent a follow-up message a few days later, telling everyone that she expected a gift from each person that was at least $200. She even included a list of items that would be acceptable gifts: designer bags, expensive jewelry, high-end skincare products, and so on. At first, I thought this might be a joke or a mistake, but it quickly became clear that she was dead serious. She emphasized that any gift below that value would be disappointing and not enough for her special day. This immediately set me off. I've always tried to be a good friend and put effort into picking out thoughtful presents, but this was a new level of entitlement I wasn't prepared for. I mean, we're friends, not people who exchange gifts to one-up each other. I'm not in the financial position to spend that kind of money on a gift. Sure, I can afford a nice present, but the idea of being told that I must spend that amount, and on something I wasn't even sure she'd appreciate, felt wrong. But I didn't want to upset her, so I decided to brush it off for the moment and not make a big deal out of it. After all, it was her birthday, and I didn't want to cause any drama. As the party date got closer, Emma continued to remind us about the expectation for the gift. She even started sending links to products she thought would be perfect for each of us, making it clear that if we were stuck for ideas, we could just buy from the list she provided. I started to feel really uncomfortable with how much pressure she was putting on everyone. It wasn't just about the gift anymore, it was about meeting her standards and expectations. A few days before her birthday, she sent another message, this time singling me out. She said, "I know you're super busy, but I really hope you'll be able to make the party and bring a gift that I'll love. I've already thought about what you can get me, so no excuses." She included a link to a luxury watch she wanted, which cost over $500. She added that she'd already been eyeing it and would be so thrilled if I could get it for her. At that point, I felt like I couldn't keep going along with this anymore. I was upset and hurt by how entitled she was acting, and I knew I needed to address it. I called her the next day and tried to be calm but firm. I explained that I really cared about our friendship, but I wasn't comfortable with the way she was handling her birthday and the pressure she was putting on her friends. I told her that I wouldn't be able to get her a gift that expensive, and I felt uncomfortable being told what to buy. I suggested that we just keep things casual, as we always had in the past, and focus more on enjoying each other's company than on material gifts. She immediately became defensive and said, "You're really not going to give me a gift? This is my big day, and I just wanted to make sure I get something I love. It's not that hard to pick out something nice." She insisted that I could just take it as a learning opportunity to step up my gift-giving game. She told me that I should have been prepared to spend that much because it's only fair given the people she associates with. I told her I understood she wanted something special, but that I wasn't comfortable with the way she was approaching it. That's when the conversation really took a turn. She snapped, saying that if I didn't want to be a real friend to her, then I shouldn't bother coming to the party at all. She said I was being petty and selfish for not being willing to put in the effort for her special day. I tried to explain that it wasn't about the effort, but about the unreasonable pressure she was placing on her friends. She told me that if I couldn't understand that, then I probably wasn't the kind of friend she wanted around anyway. I was floored. Here I was trying to be honest and respectful, and she was basically telling me that our friendship was conditional on me being able to meet her material expectations. I was hurt, but I didn't want to fight, so I told her I needed some time to think about it. That night, I sat with my thoughts and realized that this wasn't just about a birthday party. It was about how Emma had always treated our friendship like a transaction, where the value was measured in gifts, status, and what you could give her. I started to feel like I was being used, and I didn't want to be part of that anymore. The next day, I called her again and told her that I had decided not to attend her party. I said I was sorry, but I couldn't support a celebration that was so focused on materialism and expectation. I told her that I valued our friendship, but I didn't think it was healthy for me to be part of something that made me feel uncomfortable and unappreciated. She didn't take it well. She called me dramatic and said that I was overreacting. She accused me of being jealous of the life she was building and of being bitter because I didn't have the same success as her. That was the last straw. I told her I didn't think we were on the same page anymore and that I wasn't interested in continuing a friendship where I was constantly expected to meet her material demands. She hung up on me, and I haven't heard from her since. Now I'm feeling conflicted. I know I made the right choice for myself, but I can't help but wonder if I overreacted. Emma was always a bit high maintenance, but I never thought she would turn our friendship into something so transactional. I'm hurt by her reaction, but at the same time, I don't think I can stay friends with someone who views my worth based on what I can give her. So, Reddit, AITA for telling my friend I won't attend her birthday celebration after she demanded that I bring a gift she expects. AITA for refusing to take my nephew to school after my sister took advantage of me. I, 29M, work from home, which many people in my family seem to think means I do nothing all day. I have a full-time remote job that requires a lot of focus. But since I don't physically leave the house, my sister, Amanda, 34F, assumed I had plenty of free time. Amanda has a 10-year-old son, Liam. She's a single mom, and I understand that things are tough for her. She works an early shift and was struggling to get Liam to school on time. A few months ago, she asked if I could drive him in the morning since his school is only about 10 minutes from my house, and her work is in the opposite direction. She said it would only be temporary until she found another solution. At first, I didn't mind. I adjusted my morning schedule to make sure I could take him on time. It wasn't a huge inconvenience, but it did mean waking up earlier than I normally would and shifting some of my work. Weeks passed, then months, and Amanda never mentioned another solution. She just expected me to keep doing it. I brought it up a couple of times, and she'd always brush it off with, "Oh, I'm still working on it," or "You don't mind, right?" The thing is, I did mind. My mornings became more stressful, especially since my job sometimes required early meetings. I couldn't be as flexible as before, but Amanda didn't care. The breaking point came when I told her, very clearly, that I couldn't take Liam to school on certain mornings because I had important work calls. Instead of figuring something else out, she just didn't. One morning, she dropped Liam off at my house without even asking if I was available. I was in the middle of a meeting when he rang the doorbell. I ignored it at first, but he kept knocking. I had to step away from my call to answer, and there he was, standing there with his backpack. He looked confused and told me, "Mom said you'd take me." I was furious. I had to apologize to my team, rush Liam to school, and then try to get back into work mode after my meeting had already been derailed. I called Amanda and told her that was unacceptable. She acted like it was no big deal and said, "Come on, it's just a one-time thing." I reminded her that I had already told her I couldn't do it that day. She shrugged it off and told me I was overreacting. That was the last straw. I told her I was done. No more rides. She freaked out and called me selfish, saying I was punishing Liam for no reason. I told her that she had months to figure something else out, and she never even tried. She expected me to just keep doing it indefinitely, without even considering how it affected me. Now she's telling our parents that I abandoned her and Liam when she needed help the most. My mom called and said I should be a good uncle and help family when they need it. I told her that I did help for months, but Amanda took advantage of me and ignored my boundaries. My parents are divided. My dad thinks Amanda should have figured something out by now, but my mom thinks I should have given her more time. Even some of my friends think I should have just sucked it up for Liam's sake. So, AITA for refusing to take my nephew to school anymore? AITA for not inviting my brother to my housewarming after he told me he didn't want to come unless I paid for his flight? I, 30F, recently bought my first house, and after months of hard work, I was finally ready to have a small housewarming gathering to celebrate. I invited my close friends and family to share the moment with me. It's been a really exciting time in my life, and I wanted the people who matter most to be there with me. One of those people is my older brother, Jason, 32M. Jason and I have always had a bit of a complicated relationship. We've always gotten along well enough, but he's always been more laid back, and I've been more responsible and independent. He's had some struggles over the years with keeping a job, managing his finances, and sometimes it feels like I'm always the one to bail him out. He's asked for help on a number of occasions, and while I've helped him out when I could, it always felt like he was taking advantage of my generosity. When I sent out the invitation for my housewarming party, I made sure to send one to Jason. I figured it would be nice to have him there, especially since he's my brother, and we've had good times in the past. The invite was casual, just asking if he could make it, and letting him know I was excited to have him see the new place. Jason responded a few days later, saying he would love to come and visit, but there was a problem. He lives across the country. He said, "I'd love to come, but I can't afford the flight right now, and I'm not sure if I can swing it on my own." This wasn't entirely unexpected, as Jason's finances have always been tight, but I was a bit taken aback by the way he worded it. I immediately replied and said that I understood, but I wasn't in a position to cover the cost of his flight. I'm still figuring out my finances after buying the house, and I wasn't comfortable paying for his travel expenses. What happened next, though, really threw me off. Jason came back with a message that basically said, "Well, if you really want me there, you'll need to pay for my flight." He went on to say that if I wanted him to come, he'd need to be reimbursed for the cost of getting there. He even sent me some flight options and told me the price range of tickets he was looking at. It was a lot, around $400 to $500 for the round-trip ticket, and I could tell he wasn't joking around. He was serious about me covering the cost. At first, I was speechless. I couldn't believe that he was basically demanding that I pay for his flight to my own celebration. I've helped Jason out before with loans and other things, but I've never had him ask for something like this, especially not for an event that's supposed to be about celebrating my accomplishments. I'm not rich, and while I've been able to save up for the house, that doesn't mean I have extra money to throw around. I didn't want to make a big deal out of it, so I just told him I wasn't comfortable paying for his flight. I said that I understood if he couldn't come, but I'd still love for him to visit when it worked better for him. Jason didn't take that well. He called me immediately, and I could hear in his voice that he was frustrated. He told me that I was being cheap and that if I really cared about him, I would pay for the flight. He said that he was my brother, and it was my responsibility to help him out when he needed it. He also said that if I was throwing a party, I should have considered the cost of his travel in advance, and that it wasn't fair to expect him to come without any support. The conversation got heated, and he accused me of being selfish for not doing this one thing for him. He said that I was prioritizing my house and my own finances over family. I was taken aback by how angry he was getting. I told him that I loved him and that I would always be there for him in other ways, but I couldn't afford to pay for his flight, especially not for an event that wasn't that important to me. I explained that I wanted him there, but I didn't think it was fair for him to expect me to pay for his travel just because it was my housewarming. He said that if I wasn't going to pay for it, he wouldn't be able to make it, and that he'd be too embarrassed to show up without me covering the cost. At this point, I was starting to feel like he was trying to guilt-trip me into doing something I wasn't comfortable with. I tried to stay calm and told him that I didn't want him to feel bad about it, but I couldn't keep trying to solve all his problems by paying for things. I said that I'd love for him to come visit, but maybe we could plan something more affordable for another time when he was able to make the trip on his own terms. He wasn't happy with that answer and hung up on me. I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. A couple of days later, Jason messaged me again, asking if I could at least split the cost of the flight with him. He said he was only asking for half, and that it would mean a lot to him if I would just help him out. I was really frustrated by this. I felt like he was continuously pushing the issue and wasn't respecting my boundaries. I politely told him that I couldn't afford it, and I wished him the best, but that I couldn't cover any of the costs. Now, the housewarming is coming up soon, and I've decided not to invite him. I feel guilty about it, but I can't justify having him at my party after everything that's happened. I don't think it's unreasonable to want to celebrate something important to me without feeling like I need to pay for someone's travel expenses. But at the same time, I feel like I'm cutting him off for something that could have been avoided if I had just caved and given in to his request. My friends have been supportive, but some have said that I should just pay for his flight if it means so much to him, and that family should come first. My mom, who knows about the situation, also thinks I should just pay for it, but I'm standing firm in my decision not to do so. I'm stuck on whether or not I'm being unreasonable. I know that Jason has struggled financially in the past, but I've always done what I can to help him. Am I wrong for refusing to pay for his flight, or is he the one being out of line for expecting me to cover it? So Reddit, AITA, for not inviting my brother to my housewarming after he demanded that I pay for his flight? Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what could be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for cutting off my childhood best friend after she accused me of not caring about her family problems. I, 29F, have been friends with Sarah, 29F, since we were in elementary school. We grew up together, went to the same schools, and stayed close all through high school and beyond. Over the years, we shared everything from relationships to career struggles and everything in between. But lately, things have gotten complicated, and I'm honestly not sure if I'm in the wrong here. A few months ago, Sarah's life seemed to start falling apart. She was dealing with a lot of personal issues. Her parents were going through a messy divorce, and she was trying to balance being there for both of them while also managing her own work and relationship problems. I've always been there for her, no matter what. I've offered advice, listened for hours, and even helped her out financially when things got tight. But recently, it feels like everything I do is never enough, and I'm getting tired of it. It all started when Sarah's dad moved out of the family house and into an apartment across town. Sarah was taking care of her mom, who was having a hard time adjusting to being on her own. Her mom is a nice woman, but she has always been very needy, and it felt like Sarah had to be the emotional rock for both of her parents while also managing her own job. I could tell she was overwhelmed, and so I tried to be a supportive friend, checking in on her, making sure she was okay, and offering to help out whenever I could. One evening, Sarah called me in tears, saying that her mom had been complaining nonstop about how lonely she was and that she couldn't handle being on her own. Sarah had been staying with her mom at the house for the past few weeks, and it seemed like she was getting burned out. I told her that she should try to take a break, even if it was just for a night. I suggested that she come over to my place, relax, and get some time to herself. I know she loves to go hiking, so I told her we could take a weekend trip somewhere peaceful just to help her clear her mind. Sarah seemed to appreciate the idea, and we made plans for the next weekend. However, a few days later, things took an unexpected turn. Sarah called me, but this time her tone was sharp and angry. She accused me of not caring about her or her family. She said that while I'd offered her a weekend getaway, I hadn't actually been there for her when she needed me the most. She was frustrated that I hadn't offered to help her take care of her mom, that I hadn't been more involved in the whole situation. I was caught off guard as I had been doing what I thought was best, offering support, but also respecting her need for space. I tried to explain that I'd been trying to offer her a break because I knew how exhausting everything must be for her. I told her that I wasn't sure what else I could do at that moment other than offer to help her with her mom's situation or give her space to figure things out. She told me that it wasn't enough and that it felt like I was distancing myself from her problems. She said, "It's like you don't even care, like you're just waiting for me to handle everything myself." That conversation ended on a sour note, and I didn't really know what to make of it. A few days later, she sent me a long message, reiterating her frustrations. She accused me of being selfish and said that I had always been the carefree one who didn't take life as seriously as she did. According to her, I had never truly understood the weight of what she was going through, and I was only interested in making sure my own life was easy. I was stunned by how hurtful her words were. Yes, I'm more laid back and try not to get too bogged down by life's challenges, but I've always tried to support Sarah when she needed me. I've listened to her vent for hours, helped her financially when she was struggling, and offered whatever advice I could. But it felt like nothing I did was enough. She was demanding that I take on more of the emotional labor in her life. And frankly, I wasn't sure I could give any more without losing myself in the process. At this point, I felt like I was being unfairly blamed. I decided to take some time to reflect, but after thinking it over, I realized that I had to put my own mental health first. I needed to set boundaries. I hadn't been completely clear with Sarah about what I was willing and able to do, and I had been letting her demand more from me than I could reasonably give. I sent her a message, telling her that while I still cared about her deeply, I needed some space from the emotional chaos she was bringing into my life. I told her that I could no longer continue offering support without any consideration for my own needs. I explained that I couldn't take on the responsibility of her family's problems and that I needed her to respect my boundaries moving forward. Sarah did not take this well. She was furious and accused me of abandoning her when she needed me most. She said I was being selfish and that I was just running away from her problems because I didn't want to deal with them. She told me that I was no longer a real friend if I couldn't help her in her time of need. We haven't spoken much since that exchange. I've been getting messages from mutual friends asking me why I haven't tried to patch things up with Sarah. They all say that I'm being too harsh and that I should just make an effort to help her out more. But the truth is, I'm exhausted. I've been there for Sarah through thick and thin, and I'm starting to feel like I'm the only one who's putting in the effort to maintain our friendship. I'm not saying I want to abandon her, but I don't think it's fair for her to expect me to drop everything for her family problems when I'm already juggling my own life. So, AITA for cutting off my childhood best friend after she accused me of not caring about her family problems? AITA for refusing to let my best friend stay with me after she lost her job and asked to move in? I, 28F, have a best friend, Katie, 28F, who I've known for over a decade. We've always been extremely close, like sisters. We've supported each other through the ups and downs of life, and I've always considered her family. When we first met in college, we hit it off immediately, and we've stayed close ever since, even though our lives have taken very different paths. She's always been more spontaneous and carefree, while I've always been more of a planner and a bit more cautious when it comes to financial and personal decisions. We've had our differences, but we've always worked through them and been there for each other. Katie has had a bit of a rough time over the past year. She lost her job due to some budget cuts, and while she managed to get a part-time gig, it wasn't enough to cover her bills, and she's been struggling with money ever since. To add to that, she's been having some issues with her apartment complex. Her landlord isn't exactly easy to work with, and her rent has been going up consistently over the past few months. She had trouble keeping up with the rent payments, and a couple of months ago, she received an eviction notice. I tried to help by offering her some money to help her get caught up, but she refused because she didn't want to owe me anything. I respected that and understood her pride, so I didn't push the issue further. After the eviction, Katie told me she was going to stay with some other friends while she figured things out, but last week, she called me absolutely devastated. She told me she had been kicked out of her temporary living situation because the friend she was staying with had a change of plans. Katie explained that she had nowhere else to go and asked if she could stay with me while she figured things out. I could hear the desperation in her voice, and honestly, my first instinct was to say yes. We've been best friends for years, and I've always wanted to help her when she needed it. I'm also in a good place financially, so I figured it wouldn't be too much of a burden. But the more I thought about it, the more I started to second-guess myself. I live in a small 2-bedroom apartment, and I've always valued my space. I've never had anyone stay with me for an extended period of time, and the idea of having someone move in for an indefinite amount of time made me anxious. It's not that I didn't want to help Katie, but I wasn't sure I was ready for the impact it would have on my routine and my life. I knew she'd be going through a tough time, and I also knew that living with someone, especially someone who's struggling emotionally and financially, could create a tense atmosphere. But, as I said, my first instinct was to offer her the space because we're so close, and I've always wanted to be there for her. I told Katie I needed to think about it, and I would get back to her in a couple of days. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I knew that if I said yes, it could change the dynamic of our friendship. I'm naturally a bit of a loner, and while I love Katie dearly, I also need my personal space to recharge. I wasn't sure how well I'd handle having her live with me, especially with everything she was going through. I also started to worry about how long she would actually be staying. I didn't want to get into a situation where she was living with me for months on end, especially when she wasn't actively working on solving her problems. The next day, I talked it over with a few close friends who I knew would understand the situation. One of my friends, Rachel, told me I should absolutely help Katie because she's been there for me in the past, and I should return the favor. But another friend, Sarah, gave me a different perspective. She pointed out that sometimes, when we're helping people, we end up enabling their bad habits or poor decision-making. Sarah said that if Katie wasn't actively working on fixing her situation or looking for a new place to live, it might not be the healthiest choice for me to take her in. I appreciated both perspectives, but I was still torn. Eventually, I came to the conclusion that I wasn't comfortable with the idea of Katie staying with me for an indefinite amount of time. I loved her, and I wanted to help, but I knew that I couldn't sacrifice my own well-being and peace of mind in the process. I also didn't want to create a dynamic where I was constantly walking on eggshells around her or feeling resentful because I was taking on a lot of the emotional labor of helping her without seeing much effort on her end. I called Katie the next day and told her I had thought about it long and hard, but I didn't think it would be a good idea for her to move in with me. I explained that I valued our friendship too much to risk it being strained by living together, and that I wasn't sure I could provide the kind of support she needed right now, while still maintaining my own mental and emotional health. I told her that I would still help her in other ways, whether that was helping her look for a new apartment, connecting her with resources, or offering emotional support, but I couldn't offer her a place to stay. Katie was quiet on the phone for a long time, and when she finally spoke, she sounded hurt. She told me she understood, but she was really disappointed. She said she felt like I was turning my back on her, especially because she was going through such a hard time. She said it felt like I was making excuses not to help her, and she didn't understand why I couldn't just be there for her like I had been in the past. She also mentioned that she felt like I was judging her for not having her life together, and that I didn't really care about her the way I claimed to. It was a hard conversation, and I felt guilty hearing her say all that, but I also knew I had made the right choice for myself. Since that conversation, Katie has barely spoken to me. She sent me a couple of texts saying that she's staying with some other friends, but I can tell that she's still hurt. I've tried reaching out a few times, but she hasn't responded. I've been giving her space, hoping that time will heal the tension, but it's been hard. I don't want to lose our friendship over this, but I also don't regret my decision. I'm just hoping that one day, she'll understand why I couldn't do it. My other friends have told me I did the right thing, but I still feel guilty. I know I made a decision that was best for me, But I also know that Katie is struggling, and I hate that it's come to this. So Reddit. AITA for refusing to let my best friend stay with me after she lost her job and asked to move in. AITA for refusing to let my brother bring his girlfriend to my family's vacation after everything she said about me. I, 27F, come from a close-knit family of 4 siblings. I'm the youngest with 2 older brothers and a sister who is just a few years older than me. We've always been very close growing up, and I'm especially close with my brother Tom, 29. We have a lot of shared memories and always looked out for each other. But recently things have gotten a bit rocky between us because of his girlfriend, Sarah, 26. Tom started dating Sarah about a year ago. At first, I was happy for him. He'd been single for a while and seemed to really like her. But as I got to know her better, I started noticing some things that didn't sit well with me. Sarah was friendly, sure, but she always seemed to be passive-aggressive towards me. It wasn't always obvious, but I started picking up on little things she would say or do. For example, when we'd all get together for family dinners, she'd make subtle comments about my job and lifestyle choices, which honestly felt like thinly veiled judgments. I'm an artist, and while I'm not wealthy, I make a decent living through my freelance work. Sarah, on the other hand, has a stable office job in marketing. She would often say things like, "I don't know how you manage to get by without a steady job," or "You should really get health insurance. You never know when you might need it." At first, I thought she was just making conversation, but the more it happened, the more it felt like she was undermining my career. Things got worse when I started hearing from my other siblings that Sarah had been talking behind my back. Apparently, she'd made comments about me being irresponsible and how my lifestyle choices were a phase I would eventually outgrow. She even went so far as to say that my art wasn't a real career and that I would never be able to support myself long-term. It stung, especially since she didn't know the first thing about what it takes to be an artist or how hard I worked to get where I am. But instead of confronting her directly, I decided to let it go. I didn't want to make things awkward with Tom, and I figured I could tolerate her comments for the sake of my brother's happiness. Fast forward a few months, and our family plans a vacation to a cabin in the mountains. We've been doing these trips every summer for as long as I can remember, and it's always a highlight for all of us. When Tom mentioned he wanted to bring Sarah along, I was a bit hesitant, but I didn't want to be the one to say no. He's an adult, and I knew he was serious about her. However, as the trip drew closer, I started getting nervous about how things would go with Sarah. I didn't feel comfortable with her being there after all the comments she'd made about me, but I didn't want to rock the boat. A week before the trip, I was hanging out with my sister, 31F, and I casually mentioned that I was worried about Sarah's presence on the vacation. My sister, who had also picked up on Sarah's snarky remarks over time, agreed that Sarah hadn't exactly been the most welcoming. We talked about it for a bit, and eventually I asked my sister if she thought I was being too sensitive about the whole thing. She said she didn't think I was, but she also said I shouldn't let Sarah ruin the family vacation. I thought about it for a while, and ultimately decided I was going to talk to Tom. I didn't want to cause any unnecessary drama, but I also didn't want to feel uncomfortable in my own family space. I called Tom that evening and tried to keep things as calm and respectful as possible. I told him that I loved him and I was really looking forward to the trip, but I felt that it might be a little awkward with Sarah there, given everything that had been said. I mentioned that I'd been feeling hurt by some of the things she'd said about me and my career, and that I wasn't sure I'd be able to fully enjoy the trip with her there. Tom was quiet for a moment, and then he said something that shocked me. "I don't think you're being fair. She's my girlfriend, and you've known her for less than a year. You're already judging her, and you're not giving her a chance." I tried to explain that it wasn't about not giving her a chance. It was about how her comments made me feel. But Tom was insistent, and he said, "You're just being dramatic." I've been really clear with her about what's important to me, and she's apologized for any misunderstandings. It's not fair for you to hold on to this stuff. I was upset. I hadn't expected Tom to side with me, but I also didn't expect him to dismiss my feelings so easily. We argued for a while, and by the end of it, I had made the decision that I wasn't going to go on the trip if Sarah was coming. I told Tom that I couldn't go somewhere where I felt unwelcome, and I wasn't going to put myself in a position where I'd be uncomfortable just to keep the peace. I explained that I needed him to understand where I was coming from and that I didn't think it was fair to force me to choose between my own comfort and his relationship. Tom didn't take it well. He was furious, and he said, "If you don't come, then that's your choice, but you're making it seem like I'm choosing Sarah over you. This isn't about me. It's about you deciding to be stubborn and difficult." He told me that if I was going to let this one issue ruin the family vacation, then maybe I wasn't as committed to family as I said I was. The conversation ended on a tense note, and I haven't heard from Tom much since. The rest of the family seems to be caught in the middle, with some saying that I'm overreacting and others agreeing that Sarah has been disrespectful. I've been second-guessing myself ever since. I love my brother, and I don't want to make things harder for him, but I also don't think it's fair for him to expect me to just ignore the way I've been treated. It feels like I'm being asked to swallow my feelings for the sake of his relationship, and I'm just not sure if that's something I should be doing. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother bring his girlfriend to my family's vacation after everything she said about me. AITA for refusing to give my sister the family heirloom necklace after she demanded it. I, 30F, have a younger sister, Emma, 25F, who has always been a bit spoiled. Growing up, our parents did everything for her. She's the kind of person who expects things to be handed to her without much effort. I'm not saying that I've had a tough life. I'm lucky enough to have a supportive family and opportunities, but I've always had to work hard for what I have, and I've had to deal with my own setbacks. Emma, on the other hand, tends to coast through life without facing many consequences for her actions. She's never had to deal with financial hardship or any significant struggles. She has always leaned on our parents for support and has never really learned to stand on her own 2 feet. There's one thing that has been the source of tension in our family for years: the family heirloom necklace. It's a beautiful piece of jewelry that's been passed down from generation to generation. It's a diamond necklace that belonged to our great-grandmother, and my mom has always made it clear that it will eventually go to one of her daughters. Growing up, Emma and I both knew it would be ours one day, but my mom never really said when or how it would happen. It was always kind of understood that whoever was most responsible and had shown they were ready for such an important family piece would inherit it. Ever since I was a teenager, my mom has always hinted that the necklace would eventually be mine because I was more level-headed and responsible. I'm not trying to sound arrogant, but I've always taken that as a sign of approval from my mom, who has been a bit critical of Emma in the past. My mom has always said that she trusts me to take care of it and pass it down to future generations when the time comes. Emma, however, has never really been thrilled about this. She's always assumed that she would be the one to inherit the necklace, and it's been a point of tension between us for years. She constantly makes jokes about how she'll be the one to wear it first, and I've always brushed it off as just her being annoying. However, things took a serious turn when our mother recently gave the necklace to me. It happened about 2 months ago. My mom sat me down one evening and told me that she felt I was ready for the responsibility of owning the family heirloom. She said that she trusted me to care for it, and that it was time for me to have it. I was incredibly touched, and I made sure to thank her and promise that I would take good care of it. The moment felt significant to me. It felt like a passing of the torch. It wasn't just about the necklace. It was about family, tradition, and the trust my mom had in me. When I told Emma, she didn't take it well. At first, she pretended to be happy for me, but it didn't take long before the passive-aggressive comments started. She kept making remarks about how lucky I was to get the necklace, and how, of course, I would be the one to get it since I was the favorite. I tried to laugh it off, but she kept bringing it up, even at family gatherings. Eventually, it became impossible to ignore. She was making it clear that she was upset, and it was starting to affect our relationship. The real issue came up last week. Emma called me and asked if she could borrow the necklace for an event she was going to. She told me that she had a fancy dinner to attend and wanted to wear the heirloom to make a statement. I was caught off guard. I had never considered lending the necklace to anyone, especially not Emma. It was a family heirloom, and I had only just received it. To me, it felt like it was too special to lend out, especially since she had been so vocal about how much she wanted it for herself. But I didn't want to create unnecessary conflict, so I told her I wasn't comfortable with her borrowing it. Emma didn't take kindly to this. She immediately started accusing me of being selfish and of holding onto the necklace out of some misguided sense of control. She said that I was hoarding it and that it was a family piece, so I shouldn't be so protective of it. She also mentioned that our mom had always said the necklace would eventually go to her, and that it was her turn to have it now. She argued that if I truly cared about our family, I would share the necklace with her, at least for one event, so that she could feel connected to the family history. She even went as far as to accuse me of playing favorites and said that I was trying to make her feel less important in the family. At this point, I was getting frustrated. I tried to explain to her that this wasn't about her or me, but about respecting the tradition that our mom had set in place. The necklace had been passed down with the understanding that the one who was responsible and trusted by our parents would inherit it, and right now, that person was me. I also explained that I didn't want to lend it out because it was a huge responsibility and I didn't want anything to happen to it. But Emma was relentless. She started texting me nonstop, telling me how unfair it was that I was keeping the necklace from her. She said that I was being childish and that it was just a piece of jewelry. She also made a comment that really hurt. "You're acting like I'm not capable of taking care of it. Just like everything else in my life. You think I'm not good enough?" I told her that wasn't true and that this wasn't about her capability, but about me being responsible with something that had a lot of sentimental value to our family. But she didn't back down. The situation escalated when Emma told me that if I didn't lend her the necklace, she would never forgive me and that it would ruin our relationship. I was taken aback. I had no idea that the necklace meant so much to her, and I couldn't believe she was willing to threaten our relationship over it. I calmly told her that I loved her, but I wasn't going to let her pressure me into making a decision that I wasn't comfortable with. I told her that I was sorry she felt hurt, but the necklace was something that I would hold on to for now, and it wasn't up for debate. Since then, Emma has barely spoken to me. Every family gathering has been incredibly awkward. Our parents have stayed out of it, but I can tell they're both uncomfortable with the tension. I feel like I've been put in an impossible position. I don't want to lose my sister over a piece of jewelry, but I also feel like I'm doing what our mom would have wanted. Emma hasn't apologized, and she still insists that I'm being unfair. Our relationship has been strained, and I'm not sure what to do about it. So Reddit. AITA for refusing to lend my sister the family heirloom necklace after she demanded it. AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay with me after he made a hurtful comment about my relationship. I, 29F, have always had a close relationship with my family, particularly with my cousin, Ethan, 28M. We grew up together, spending summers at our grandparents' house, and always being there for each other during difficult times. Ethan and I have a great bond, and I always thought he was someone I could trust and confide in. However, things have become strained recently, and I'm starting to question whether I've been too lenient with him for the sake of family. A few months ago, Ethan reached out to me and asked if he could stay with me for a week. He had just gone through a breakup with his long-term girlfriend, and he was feeling down and needed a place to crash while he figured things out. I was more than happy to help him out, as I know how hard breakups can be, and I wanted to support him in any way I could. I have a spare room in my apartment, so I told him it would be no problem for him to stay with me. For the first few days, everything seemed fine. Ethan was polite, respectful, and seemed genuinely grateful for my hospitality. We spent a few evenings talking, and I tried to be there for him, offering advice and a listening ear. However, about 4 days into his stay, things took a turn. One evening, after we had finished dinner, we were sitting on the couch watching a movie when Ethan suddenly made a comment that caught me completely off guard. He looked at me with this strange, almost judgmental expression and said, "I don't get it. You're such a smart, capable person, and yet you're still with him?" I mean, it's just sad at this point. I had no idea what he was talking about at first, but then he clarified, "You've been with Alex for over 4 years now, and he's still not making any real effort to change. He's always been lazy, and honestly, it's embarrassing. You're so much better than that. You deserve someone who actually matches your potential." For context, Alex, 30M, is my boyfriend. We've been together for a while, and while we don't have a perfect relationship, I love him, and we've made it work despite some challenges. Alex is a bit of a slacker by society's standards. He's not super career-driven, and he's not into a lot of the traditional milestones like buying a house or constantly striving for promotions. However, he's kind-hearted, funny, and incredibly supportive in his own way. He's always been there for me emotionally, and we communicate openly about the things that matter to us. I don't think his lack of ambition makes him a bad person, and I've never felt like he was holding me back in any way. I was taken aback by Ethan's comment. We've had discussions about relationships in the past, but he had never been this direct or critical. I told him that Alex and I had a different dynamic and that I didn't appreciate him speaking about my boyfriend like that. I tried to explain that relationships aren't just about career success or hitting certain milestones. They're about emotional connection and mutual respect, which Alex and I had. Ethan didn't take my response well. He looked at me with this incredulous expression and said, "You're just making excuses for him. You've been settling for years, and you're too scared to admit it. I'm just being honest with you, because I care about you." I felt blindsided and hurt by his words. Ethan and I had always been able to talk openly, but this felt different. I felt like he was being judgmental about something he didn't fully understand. I asked him to explain why he felt the need to speak so negatively about my relationship, and he shrugged it off, saying, "I'm just looking out for you. You're my family, and I don't want to see you waste any more time on someone who's clearly not going to live up to your potential." At that moment, I realized that Ethan had no understanding of what my relationship was actually like. He was so focused on the idea of success and ambition that he didn't see the deeper emotional connection Alex and I shared. I told Ethan that I didn't need his unsolicited opinions on my relationship and that I didn't appreciate him trying to undermine something that was important to me. He seemed surprised by my reaction and got defensive, saying, "Well, I'm just being honest. If you're offended, that's on you." The rest of the evening was awkward, and I could tell that Ethan was upset that I didn't take his advice. The next day, he spent most of the day in his room, and we barely spoke to each other. I wasn't sure what to do. I'd never seen this side of Ethan before. He'd always been supportive and understanding, but now it felt like he was judging me for something I held dear. I began to question whether I'd made a mistake inviting him into my home in the first place. After a few days, Ethan started becoming more distant. He was still polite, but he wasn't engaging in conversations with me like he used to. It became clear that he was uncomfortable around me, and honestly, I didn't feel comfortable around him either. I kept thinking about the comment he made, and it hurt more than I'd like to admit. I know that family can sometimes offer unsolicited advice, but this felt like an attack on my relationship, and it wasn't something I was willing to accept. Finally, I decided to have a conversation with Ethan. I told him that while I understood he might have had good intentions, his comment about Alex was hurtful, and it made me question whether it was a good idea to have him stay with me for the rest of the week. I explained that I didn't want to create any more tension, but I didn't feel comfortable hosting him in my home after the way he'd spoken about my boyfriend. Ethan seemed shocked by my decision. He told me that he was just trying to help and that I was overreacting. But I stood firm, saying that I needed to prioritize my relationship and my feelings over his opinions. Ethan packed his things and left that day, and we haven't spoken much since. I've received some messages from him apologizing for what he said, but it doesn't feel like a genuine apology. He seems more upset that I didn't just brush it off and move on. My family has been asking why I ended things so abruptly with him, and while I've tried to explain my side, they seem to think I'm overreacting. They say he was just trying to be honest and that I should have let it slide for the sake of family. I'm still struggling with whether I made the right decision. I love Ethan and want to support him, but I also feel like he crossed a line by making such a personal, hurtful comment about my relationship. I can't shake the feeling that if I let this slide, it would have meant ignoring my own feelings for the sake of family harmony. So, AITA for refusing to let my cousin stay with me after he made a hurtful comment about my relationship. AITA for not attending my best friend's birthday because of how she treated my boyfriend. I, 28F, have been best friends with Sarah, 28F, for over 15 years. We've been through thick and thin together, and she has always been someone I consider family. We met in high school, and ever since, we've been inseparable. We both have been through some rough patches, but we've always supported each other, no matter what. Now, I've been in a relationship with my boyfriend, Tom, 30M, for about 2 years. Tom and I have had our fair share of challenges, but we have a strong relationship. He's kind, hardworking, and genuinely cares about me. I've always been open about my relationship with Sarah, and while she's never been the biggest fan of Tom, I never thought it would affect our friendship. A few weeks ago, Sarah's birthday was coming up, and she invited me to her celebration at a restaurant. The invitation was sent out in a group chat with other mutual friends, and it seemed like it would be a nice night out. However, When I asked Sarah if Tom was invited, she didn't respond right away. After a few hours, she sent a text saying, "I'm not sure if Tom should come to the birthday. You know how he is, and it's a small gathering, so I think it might be awkward." At first, I was confused. I knew that Sarah and Tom didn't get along very well, but I didn't think it was to the point where she would exclude him from her birthday party. I've never asked Sarah to change the way she feels about Tom, but I do expect her to respect him, especially when he's been nothing but polite to her. I responded by saying, "I don't want to come if Tom isn't invited. It wouldn't feel right without him there." Sarah's response was immediate, and it was clear she didn't like my stance. She said, "Come on, you know how Tom is. He doesn't fit in with our group, and I don't want him making things uncomfortable. It's my birthday, and I want to enjoy it without having to worry about him." I was shocked. I've always been supportive of her and her friendships, but now it felt like she was trying to control who I could bring into our friendship circle. I tried to reason with her, explaining that Tom was important to me, and it wasn't about her birthday being ruined. It was about mutual respect. I told her that if she didn't want him there, I wouldn't attend. I wasn't willing to compromise on that. She then came back with, "Well, if you choose Tom over me, that's your decision, but don't come crying to me later when things go south." This hurt a lot. It felt like Sarah was giving me an ultimatum, and it wasn't even about a real issue. Tom had never been rude or disrespectful toward her, so this didn't feel like it was about him. It felt like Sarah was being unreasonable. I tried to explain that I wasn't asking her to suddenly love Tom or change her opinion about him, but I was just asking for respect. I decided to talk to Tom about the situation. I explained the conflict and how I was feeling torn between my best friend and my boyfriend. Tom, being the supportive person he is, told me that he didn't want to cause any tension, and if Sarah didn't want him at the birthday, then he would stay home, so I could go without any issues. I appreciated his understanding, but I felt conflicted. I didn't want to choose, but I also didn't want to let Sarah dictate my relationships. The day before Sarah's birthday, I called her again. I told her I couldn't attend if she was going to be this adamant about excluding Tom. I wanted her to understand that it wasn't just about a party. It was about her respect for the people I love. Sarah was incredibly defensive. She told me that I was being dramatic and overreacting, and that it wasn't a big deal. She accused me of letting my relationship define who I am and said that I was choosing Tom over our friendship. I was stunned. This was my best friend, the person who knew everything about me, and now she was accusing me of putting a man before her. I told her that it wasn't about choosing, but about respect, and that was the moment I realized that maybe she didn't respect me as much as I thought. In the end, I chose not to go to the birthday. I stayed home with Tom and told Sarah that I wouldn't be attending because of how she treated the situation. I explained that I wasn't comfortable with the way she was excluding him, and I didn't want to put myself in a position where I had to choose. I told her that I hoped she would understand, but I wasn't going to sacrifice my relationship with Tom for her birthday party. The next day, I received a text from Sarah. She was furious. She said, "I can't believe you chose Tom over me. I never thought you'd let a guy come between us. You've always been my best friend, but clearly you don't care about our friendship as much as you care about him. I'm really hurt by this, and I'm not sure how we can move forward after this." I tried to reach out to her to talk things through, but she refused to meet or talk over the phone. It's been over a week since the birthday, and we haven't spoken. I feel like I've lost one of the most important people in my life because of this situation. I miss her, but I don't feel like I did anything wrong by standing up for Tom. He's a huge part of my life, and I shouldn't have to choose between him and my best friend. It feels like Sarah is trying to control my relationships, and that's not something I'm willing to tolerate. So, AITA for not attending my best friend's birthday because of how she treated my boyfriend? AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her kids to my house anymore after they ruined my birthday party? I, 30F, have always been close with my family, but things have been a bit tense lately because of my sister, Katie, 34F, and her kids. To give some context, Katie has 2 kids, Emma, 8, and Jack, 6. I love them dearly, but they've always been a bit of a handful. Emma can be very outgoing and excitable, while Jack has a tendency to act out, especially when he's not getting his way. Katie has always been a bit lax when it comes to discipline, and while I understand that every parent has their own style, it's gotten to the point where I feel like her kids' behavior is negatively affecting my life. It all came to a head recently on my birthday. I decided to have a small get-together at my house with a few close friends and family. I made sure to plan everything carefully, from the food to the decorations to the activities. I wanted it to be a relaxed and fun day where I could catch up with everyone and enjoy myself. I specifically asked my sister not to bring her kids because I knew they could be disruptive, and I wanted this birthday to be about me for once. I told her that I had planned a more adult-oriented gathering and that I didn't think it would be the best environment for the kids. Katie was initially disappointed, but said she understood, and she assured me that she would make other arrangements. The day of the party came, and everything was going well at first. The food was great, people were chatting, and I was feeling good. However, around an hour into the party, my sister arrived along with Emma and Jack. I was immediately taken aback. I hadn't expected her to bring them after we had talked about it, but there they were. My sister didn't even acknowledge my surprise or concern. She just walked in, and the kids immediately started running around the living room, screaming and knocking into people. I tried to keep my cool at first, but it was difficult. Every time I turned around, Emma was climbing on the furniture, and Jack was yelling at the top of his lungs about wanting to play with the balloons I had set up as decorations. My friends and family seemed uncomfortable, and my mood started to shift. It wasn't just the noise. It was the fact that my sister had completely disregarded my wishes. I felt like I couldn't even enjoy my own birthday because the kids were taking over everything. I tried to be polite and kept telling the kids to settle down, but they would just ignore me. I even asked Katie if she could help get them under control, but she seemed unfazed. She was busy talking to my other relatives and didn't seem to notice how out of hand the situation was becoming. At one point, Emma knocked over one of the birthday cakes I had set up for dessert, and Jack spilled a drink all over the floor. By then, I was really frustrated, and I pulled Katie aside to talk. I told her that I had asked her not to bring the kids, and that I was really upset that she had ignored my request. I explained that I had put a lot of effort into planning this day, and it wasn't fair to have her kids causing chaos. Katie's response was defensive. She told me I was being dramatic and that I should just deal with it. She said that I should be grateful she even came to the party, as if her presence was a favor to me. I was stunned. I had tried to be polite about the situation, but her response made me feel like she didn't care about how I felt. The rest of the party went downhill from there. The kids continued to misbehave, and I had to spend the whole time making sure they weren't breaking things or causing any more messes. I felt like I was hosting a kids' party instead of a birthday celebration for myself. I was also disappointed in how Katie was handling the situation. She didn't even try to discipline them, and when I confronted her again, she just told me to relax and enjoy the party. By the end of the night, I was completely drained and upset. I didn't even get to enjoy the time with my friends and family because I was constantly running around after the kids. As soon as everyone left, I sent Katie a message telling her I was disappointed with how things went. I told her that I had been clear about my expectations, and she completely disregarded them. I explained that while I love her kids, their behavior was inappropriate for the type of event I had planned, and I didn't feel like it was fair to my guests or me to have them there. Katie didn't take it well. She sent me a long message saying that I was being selfish and unreasonable. She told me that it was just a birthday and that I should have been able to handle a little noise and chaos. She also said that if I didn't want her kids around, I shouldn't have invited her in the first place. The message ended with her saying, "If this is how you're going to act, I don't see how we can keep being close." I was shocked. It felt like she was turning the situation around to make me the villain for simply wanting to enjoy my own celebration. I took some time to think about everything. I've always tried to be understanding of my sister and her parenting, but this was the last straw. I felt like I had made a reasonable request, and she completely disregarded it. Since then, I've been feeling really hurt by her actions and words. I decided to tell her that, for the time being, I didn't want her kids at my house. I told her that I needed a break from the chaos and that I wasn't willing to host them anymore if this was how things were going to be. I also told her that I still wanted to maintain a relationship with her, but I couldn't do it if she kept prioritizing her kids' behavior over my feelings. Since then, I haven't heard from Katie much. I've received a couple of texts where she says she's upset with me, but she hasn't tried to really talk it through. I feel like I'm stuck between wanting to have a healthy relationship with my sister and wanting to set boundaries for my own well-being. I know her kids are important to her, but I don't think it's too much to ask for respect when I've made it clear that I need a certain environment in my home. So, AITA for telling my sister she can't bring her kids to my house anymore after they ruined my birthday party. AITA for not attending my parents' anniversary dinner because my brother's fiancée was invited. I, 29F, have always had a great relationship with my family. We're close, and we always celebrate special occasions together. My parents are happily married and are about to celebrate their 30th anniversary. It's a big deal to us, and they've been talking about it for months, planning a special dinner to mark the occasion. They decided to host the dinner at a nice restaurant, and they invited the whole family, including my siblings. I have two brothers, Jake, 32M, and Ryan, 25M. Jake is married with kids, and Ryan is engaged to his fiancée, Leah, 26F. Now, Leah and I have never really gotten along. I'm not going to say that I dislike her, but we just don't click. I've always felt like she's a bit dismissive of me and my opinions, and we have had some disagreements in the past, mainly about things she said to me or my family. For example, at one point, she made a snide remark about how I dress, calling it too plain and suggesting that I should try harder to look more stylish. I didn't appreciate the comment, and I've always felt that Leah has this air of superiority that doesn't sit well with me. Over the past year or so, I've tried to be civil with her because I know how much she means to my brother Ryan, but it hasn't been easy. There have been a few other incidents where Leah made comments that I found rude or unnecessary, but I've always brushed them off because I didn't want to cause any tension with my family, especially since Ryan is so happy with her. When the anniversary dinner plans were finalized, I was excited but also apprehensive. My parents had mentioned that the dinner would be an intimate family gathering, but when I saw the guest list, Leah was included. I immediately felt uncomfortable. I didn't want to make a scene, but I also didn't want to pretend like everything was fine with her, especially after some of the things she said to me. I didn't bring it up to anyone initially because I didn't want to make my parents feel like they had to choose between me and Leah. However, a few days before the dinner, I spoke to my mom privately and told her that I wasn't sure I could attend if Leah was going to be there. I explained that I didn't feel comfortable around her and that I didn't think it was healthy for me to be in that environment for such an important family event. My mom was surprised and asked me to elaborate on what had happened between Leah and me. I told her about the comments Leah had made over the past year, and I also mentioned how I had tried to be civil but hadn't received the same effort in return. My mom tried to calm me down, saying that it was my brother's fiancée and that I should make an effort for the sake of family. She told me it was only one dinner and that I needed to get over my feelings for the evening. I understood where she was coming from, but I still felt hurt. I didn't think it was fair for me to just let go of my feelings because Leah was family now. I told my mom that I wasn't asking for her to choose, but I didn't think I could sit through the dinner pretending everything was fine. My mom seemed upset with me and said she didn't want any drama at the anniversary celebration and that I should really reconsider. I told her I'd think about it, but needed some time to process everything. The night before the dinner, I called Ryan and told him how I felt. I explained that I didn't feel comfortable attending the anniversary celebration if Leah was going to be there, and I reminded him of some of the things she had said to me in the past. Ryan was immediately defensive. He told me that I was being unfair and that I should be happy that he found someone he loves. He said that he didn't expect me to be best friends with Leah, but that I needed to at least respect her and be civil for the sake of family. He accused me of making it all about myself and said that it wasn't fair to ruin their special day because of my personal issues with Leah. I tried to explain that it wasn't about ruining anyone's day, but I just didn't feel comfortable in that environment, especially when I felt like Leah had been disrespectful toward me in the past. Ryan got even more upset and told me that if I couldn't make an effort, then I shouldn't come at all. I was hurt, but I also knew he was right in one way. This was his celebration, and I didn't want to make it about me. Still, I felt like my feelings were being dismissed, and that was hard to swallow. In the end, I decided not to go to the dinner. I texted my parents and told them that I wouldn't be attending the anniversary celebration. I explained that I couldn't put myself in a situation where I'd have to pretend everything was fine with Leah, especially after all the things she'd said. I said I was sorry and that I hoped they could understand my decision. The fallout has been huge. My parents are upset with me, saying that I'm being selfish and that I've ruined a special day for them. They say that I'm making it all about my feelings and not thinking about how this affects everyone else. My dad said I was being immature and that I needed to grow up and deal with Leah being part of the family. Ryan has barely spoken to me since then, and he's made it clear that he's disappointed in my choice. He said that if I couldn't make an effort for his fiancée, then maybe I wasn't as committed to the family as I claimed. I feel like I've been put in a position where I have to choose between my family and my own comfort. I understand that I might be overreacting, but I just don't know how to move forward when it feels like no one is respecting my boundaries. I'm trying to be the bigger person, but it's hard when my feelings are being dismissed. I'm hurt by my brother's response, and I feel like my parents are taking his side because he's their son and Leah is family now. So, AITA for not attending my parents' anniversary dinner because my brother's fiancée was invited? Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.